Many of us have questions about our water, and we want to ensure that what we drink is safe. There's a lot that goes into protecting and processing water as it travels from its source to our tap. The Environmental Health Sciences Research Center caught up with officials from around the state of Iowa to ask them important questions about our water quality. Here are some of their answers. What is a consumer confidence report?
The Consumer Confidence Report is an annual report that we as a drinking water utility are required to provide to our customers and to the general public. For us, it's available on our website, but it measures our conformity with a number of drinking water requirements that come to us through the Safe Drinking Water Act and the federal EPA delegated through the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. One of the things that I think is, kind of uniquely American and a public health issue is that safe drinking water requirements are equally applicable in a big city or a small town. You get into some variations where they're private systems and are unregulated at all. But in terms of public health, we think that there should be very little public health difference in the water in Denver or Des Moines or Dubuque or Davenport. We all provide and are required to provide drinking water that meets public health requirements, and we do.
How often is my water tested?
For testing, it all actually starts in the treatment plant. Here in Ames for our facility, we're staffed around the clock 24/7 by licensed operators. And they are testing the water essentially every 2 hours, checking the water quality. There's a total of 192 tests that are done per day before the water even leaves the treatment plant. And now once the water leaves and it's in the distribution system, we're actually going out multiple times a week, going into homes and businesses, collecting samples and testing to make sure that the water quality hasn't changed from what it was when it left our facility.
Some monitoring is actually done continuously, like chlorine residual leaving the treatment plant is actually monitored all the time on a continuous basis. Other things are tested hourly, multiple times a day, maybe daily, weekly, monthly. Some things are only tested quarterly, depending on how likely it is that they'll be found, things like that.
What is an MCL and MCLG?
So when you look at the regulations, and there are two different sets that the EPA establishes. One is the maximum contaminant level, or an MCL, and that's the regulatory number. That's a hard and fast number that utilities have to comply with. And then there's a maximum contaminant level goal, which is not a regulatory number. It's sort of an aspirational, in the ideal world, this is what we think it should be. And the difference between those two numbers can come from a number of things. It could come from an ability to actually test down to the very, very small quantities that an MCL goal might be expressed in. There may be reasons due to treatment technology. Maybe there's not a technology that actually lets us get to where the goal would be. So that would be another reason for a difference between the two.
How does the government decide what contaminants to regulate?
They go through a fairly elaborate process of determining what is likely to be found in public drinking water supplies. They develop a contaminant candidate list of those contaminants that are likely to be found. Then they go through an unregulated contaminant monitoring process where they actually ask utilities to monitor for those things. They find out which ones are there, how frequently they are there, and then ultimately they will develop regulations for those that are there in high enough quantities and often enough to be of public health significance.
How do you remediate water to make it safe?
Yeah, so what to do when you detect something in drinking water? The first question is it something that's of concern? The next decision that has to be made is it there in a concentration that's high enough that it creates a health concern? Because it's not only the presence of toxics, but are they in a toxic amount? Is it high enough at a level that it's actually a concern? Now, how you take them out is going to vary dramatically based on what the contaminant is. If, for example, it's some sort of a bacterial contaminant, That's going to be addressed through different disinfection methods, commonly through the use of chlorine, but other methods, ultraviolet light and other methods can be used also. If it's more of a chemical as opposed to a bacterial issue, it could be things like lime softening that will precipitate out chemicals. We could use membrane systems to filter it out. The treatment plant is really tailored around what the issue of concern is for the particular source water, and that's why every drinking water plant is different.
Water that's at the surface is susceptible to all kinds of pollutants. Anything that runs off during a rainstorm or can be spilled or find its way into the river or lake. The benefit of being susceptible to all those things is that you have to have a very robust treatment process to ensure that you can deal with all of those things. And we do have a very robust treatment process. We send the water through what we call pre-sedimentation, which takes out anything that will sink, sand, silt, all of those kind of things. We then send it through a lime softening process, which raises the pH to a very high level, which softens the water, but it also provides a very effective bacteria kill. Then we filter it and chlorinate it, multi-barrier approach.
You know, our task is pretty simple. It's to take source water, and in our case, that's almost exclusively surface water as opposed to groundwater, and use that as the base product through our systems of treatment to make it safe. A big part of that in terms of remediation, at least as I would say, is source water protection. We want to continue to articulate that Iowa has horrible surface water quality for both drinking water purposes but also for recreational purposes. The waters in Minnesota and Wisconsin are, at least at some level, far safer and far more economic for water providers to make available to consumers than they are for us. So we're great proponents of source water protection, doing more to regulate environmental protection in the state.
What would you like to tell consumers about their water?
What would I like people to know about their water? I would like them to know that there are 210 very dedicated people here on the job every day ensuring that their water quality is the best that it can be, that it meets all the drinking water standards, and if there's ever an issue, they'll know about it.
I think it's really important for people to first understand how important drinking water is to the way we actually live our lives. The quality of the water that's available to consumers in the U.S. is, bar none, the safest in the world. Utilities shouldn't be complacent and assume that nothing new is needed. The science continues to evolve. The technology to detect at ever lower and lower levels continues to evolve. And we have to continue to evaluate new chemicals are produced, you know, as industry and manufacturing changes and progress, that creates new things that could get into the water. And I think it's important to know that as an industry, the drinking water profession continues to look at those, because that's our sole reason for existing, is to protect public health.